Now, this is some parts bin robbery. It's got the brakes from the previous Golf R, the limited slip diff from the current GTI, and it comes fitted with adaptive dampers as standard equipment. Plus, it's wrapped in a chassis that usually drags a torsion beam around, and it's powered by an engine 2 generations old. Is this the performance bargain of the decade, or is the Jetta having a midlife crisis? Today, we find out if all of this hardware can overcome its budget roots. I'm Brian Makse, and on this channel you get reviews for drivers from drivers. And sure, you will say that the wrapper, this Jetta, is boring, but the hardware sure isn't. Here's what Volkswagen spent its money on. Now, the spec sheet says 228 horsepower and 258 pounds of torque, which sounds modest until you realize where all of that torque lives. Peak torque runs from 1,700 RPM to 4,400 RPM. That's a plateau 2,700 RPM wide. What that means in the real world is brutal acceleration all through the mid-range, making one of my favorites, the Civic Si, just look like it's thinking about it. There's no drama, no turbo lag, just that immediate shove anytime, whether you're leaving from a stoplight or merging onto the highway. And that, my friends, is what usable power actually means. Now, I do think Volkswagen knew exactly what it was doing when it chose this Gen 3 motor for the GLI instead of the Evo 4. It does have a history of reliability, and it's got massive tuning potential. But that doesn't mean that it's perfect. It kind of runs out of breath past about 5,000 or 5,100 RPM, and what I find is I'm naturally short shifting this engine simply because I want to be on top of all of that torque. There's no point in even pretending there's any redline drama here. It's not exciting to rev. It doesn't really sing, but that wall of torque hits harder than anything else in this price range. Shift early, ride that wave of torque, and you'll walk away from lots of cars that sound a heck of a lot angrier than this does. Now, as much as I love this drivetrain, the one thing I do have to point out is that throws of this manual shifter are a bit on the long side, and if you're coming from a Honda, well, this is going to feel a bit agricultural. Plus, if you're new to the manual transmission experience, the shift quality isn't what I'd call confidence-inspiring. However, I've been driving manuals for years, and I do enjoy shifting this gearbox, and I'm very happy with it. And on top of that, it will gladly shift without a clutch. On the other hand, what I will say is that the gear ratios are extremely well chosen for the way this 2-liter turbo makes power and torque. Plus, the clutch has great feel, and it's light enough without feeling completely numb. You do get a sense of where that bite point actually is. Now, a word about this differential, and let me be clear here. This is an electronically controlled limited slip diff, same one that's used in the GTI. This does not use brake-based torque vectoring to pretend that there's a limited slip diff here. This is the real thing. There's an actual clutch pack in there that can send up to 100% of torque to the outside wheel. That's just brilliant. Anytime you're accelerating out of a corner, you can feel it working, distributing torque appropriately, so this thing just pulls out of corners, and it transforms what front-wheel drive physics is supposed to mean. If you push a regular front-wheel drive sedan, well, chances are understeer is going to rear its ugly head. You're going to push on entry and push on exit. This diff allows you to rotate the car on entry, and then it just powers out confidently. Sure, you can say parts bin again, but for this part, they rated the expensive bin. This single component is exactly why this car corners as well as cars costing twice its price. It's probably the single most expensive component on this entire car, and the best part is you feel it every time you're having fun in the corners, and that's from corner entry all the way through corner exits. You can use almost all of that power. Now, subscribers get notified when new episodes drop on this channel. Non-subscribers hope the algorithm shows it to them eventually. And if you want to know when new episodes drop from this channel, well, that's what the subscribe button does. Steering's electrically assisted, but Volkswagen is using a variable ratio rack here. What that means is the ratio gets quicker with the more lock you add with your steering inputs. You get great turn-in response, but you also don't have to be busy in parking lots shuffling your hands around when you're trying to maneuver into a parking spot. Feel is typical VW electric steering. There's weight, there's accuracy, but not much texture that's coming through the steering wheel. What you do get is confidence. This goes exactly where you point it, and it weights up naturally as you push through corners. It doesn't talk to you all that much, but it is predictable, and as far as I'm concerned, I'd rather have predictable than chatty steering when the corners get interesting. Yes, the front brakes come from the previous gen Golf R, and they've painted the calipers red to be a little bit flashy, but these brakes I really like. Bite strong, pedals firm, lots of stopping power, and the best part, feedback is fantastic. I can actually feel what's going on at those two front contact patches when I'm pushing this thing, whether it's in the corners or stopping for an emergency, and these brakes are absolutely fantastic. This is a case where the parts bin had exactly the right parts for this GLI. The adaptive dampers are standard equipment on the GLI, and in a lot of cars, that's easily a $1,000 option, if not more. In comfort mode, it rides smoothly, and it's happy to soak up the bumps that are nasty roads or happy to throw at us while I'm driving here. Now, in sport mode, it doesn't transform into a track weapon, but it does firm up damping so that wheel and body control is a little bit sharper. The real story is what Volkswagen has done with that rear suspension. The regular Jetta rides on a torsion beam back there. This has independent control arms, and that does wonders for handling. Mid-corner bump with a torsion beam rear suspension, well, it's going to do a whole lot of complaining and not a lot of handling. This setup allows the rear suspension to do what good rear suspensions do: soak up the bumps when necessary and handle predictably at the limit. Here's where the adult enthusiast positioning of the GLI makes sense. When the dampers are in comfort mode, this rides better than any crossover you can name. It's compliant, it's quiet, it doesn't crash over bumps, and seems like there's just the right amount of suspension travel here. And when you throw it into sport, it doesn't float over crests like we're doing here or bottom out on compressions. Sure, the dampers aren't magic, they're not that special, but you do get the sense that here in this GLI, this will handle your Monday to Friday daily commute very comfortably, and then deal with your occasional Saturday track day with composure. And that's rare. If you want to support the channel beyond just watching, well, the merch store is open, and your support there means more time for us to produce episodes like this and less time worrying about manufacturer blacklists. No pressure, just an option. I'm sure someone will clarify if this is a Canadian spec thing or North America wide, but here this seat is powered, the passenger seat is manual. Not that I'm complaining, because of course I'm the driver, but here the seats are heated and ventilated, and for me, I love these seats. Comfortable over long distances, definitely supportive in the corners, and you can definitely do track days with these seats without getting thrown around too much. There's just the right mix of cornering support and comfort. Steering wheel is just the right shape and the right size, forgetting about the flat bottom bit for a second. I know some of you really like that. I don't. I like a round steering wheel, but it does encourage you to have your hands at 9 and 3. It's wrapped in leather and just works. Plus, there's enough adjustment in the steering column for just about anybody who isn't 7 feet tall or taller. Between the seat the pedals and the steering wheel, I've just got this wonderful interface to this GLI. And on top of that, visibility is excellent because when Volkswagen designed the Jetta, they knew what they were doing with the fundamentals. There are a couple of places here where Volkswagen has resisted the industry's death march to haptic touch everything. There's a volume knob and a tuning knob here beside the screen, but on the steering wheel, these are actual buttons for your adaptive cruise control as well as some secondary controls, and I tell you, I really appreciate it. The infotainment system's UI is pretty basic. It's easy to navigate, easy to change settings. I use it on wireless CarPlay. There is Android Auto, and that's just fine. I just leave it on wireless Apple CarPlay, and I'm very happy this way. When it comes to climate controls, however, this is all haptic touch. They're the sliders for temperature and that sort of thing, but I can't complain about it too much because I generally just set the temperature, leave it on auto, and forget all about it. This interior is a whole lot of part spin special. The outside, well, it just looks like every other Jetta on the road. And that's the thing. Nothing visually announces what this car can do, which begs the question, how do you sell a performance sedan that doesn't look the part? The upholstery's premium, but a lot of the hard surfaces here come straight out of the regular Jetta's parts bin. You look around, there's lots of red contrasting stitching, which kind of announces that this is supposed to be the sporty Jetta. And overall, some of it works, some of it comes off as a bit try-hard, but the best part, nothing rattles and nothing squeaks. The like button tells YouTube to share this episode with more people like you who are interested in an episode like this. And if this episode gave you more information than a brochure or a press release, well, that's the entire ask. That's my take after a week. Here's what owners are actually reporting after several months with this thing. Those stock Hankook all seasons are universally panned. Now, I can't validate it personally with this car. This car came fitted with winter tires because it's January in Canada. With those Hankooks, owners consistently report mediocre wet grip, useless snow performance, and grip levels that prevent the chassis from showing what it can actually do. Every single owner forum I read mentions the tires. That kind of consensus across hundreds of owners who actually paid for this car matters more than what I could tell you from a week with different rubber. Budget for replacements as soon as you can because it sounds like it's the single most common modification. Now, a bit of good news. Fuel consumption. Owners report 35 to 40 miles per gallon highway, regularly beating EPA estimates. For 228 horsepower, that's impressive. And this Gen 3 motor has a strong reliability record. Multiple owners get past 100,000 miles with routine maintenance only. And if you get the manual like this one, prepare for the rev hang experience. You're not going to get rid of it with a stock tune, you just have to drive around it. For clarity, what that means is engine speed hangs on a little longer than expected when you dip the clutch and revs don't drop. It's programmed for emissions and you can't fix it without a tune. That's one of the things that reviewers often miss and long-term owners definitely notice. And speaking of which, if you own one of these or have quality seat time with one of these, let me know in the comments what I got right, what I got wrong, because real-world ownership experiences are much more important than anything I can learn in a week-long press loan, and I always read those comments. Does the hardware overcome the Jetta's budget roots? Well, every time I drive this, it paints a smile on my face, so my answer is yes, completely. It has great brakes from the previous Golf R, the electronically controlled limited slip diff from the GTI, and adaptive dampers as standard equipment, plus that multi-link rear suspension transforms how this handles, especially on limit. And think about it this way, that's thousands of dollars in proper equipment that's bolted to a chassis that costs Volkswagen peanuts to build. And I think that's Volkswagen's part spin strategy. They use the expensive stuff where it makes a difference and the inexpensive Jetta stuff where it has an impact on the bottom line. And when executing that strategy, I think they knew exactly which bin mattered. Still, the wrapper's boring. This looks like every other Jetta on the road. But what if that's the point? Volkswagen didn't fail at making this look special. I think they recognize that some people specifically don't want to look special. And if you think about it, this is mechanical excellence disguised at mediocrity, and that might be the entire point. This GLI is for the adult enthusiast because you want a car that can handle the Monday to Friday commute or school run, whatever the case is, still deal with our nasty road surfaces with a comfortable ride, and then still be a blast on a back road run or the occasional track day. It's a dual threat bargain. It's 90 or 95% of a GTI for thousands of dollars less. It doesn't win any single category, it doesn't lose any either, and that, my friends, is maturity when it comes to enthusiast cars. That's the 2026 Volkswagen Jetta GLI with the manual gearbox. Subscribe if you want to see more episodes like this. Don't if you don't. Comments are open if you disagree, and the merch store link is here if you want to support more episodes like this. See you on the next one.